In the first episode of his new streaming show, Mehdi Unfiltered, progressive political commentator Mehdi Hasan brought the receipts and used the words of Donald Trump and his MAGA cultists to lay out a hypothetical but increasingly probable timeline of the first 100 days of a second Trump administration. And then he consulted with a former top Trump advisor to check his math. But before we unpack all that, if you end up liking this video and you want to support the channel, please be sure to hit the like, subscribe, and alert bell before you go. I'd greatly appreciate it. All right, friends, we have several clips to play in this video, and I'm excited because Mehdi Hasan is my favorite mainstream progressive political commentator, and MSNBC hasn't been the same since he left the network after they sidelined him. Now, he has his own project called Zeteo, and you should definitely subscribe if you haven't yet, and you're in a position to. It's zeteo.com. And it has this full episode of the first episode of Mehdi Unfiltered, and we're not going to play the whole thing, but I do want to play some select clips because the last part of this episode is dedicated to basically laying out the stakes of what it might mean if Donald Trump becomes president again. And I can't stress this enough. He brings the receipts. It's not wild speculation. He's using the words and statements and clips of Trump and Trump advisors and MAGA cultists to paint this picture, okay, which means that it is quite possible and increasingly likely. So let's play some of the clips. We'll unpack them together.
If you're one of those people, even on the left, who isn't that concerned by the prospect of a Trump second term, that it won't be that bad, that we survived Trump the first time round, then this next segment is for you. See, I need you to hear me out, and I need you to picture the scene. It's January 20th, 2025, Inauguration Day. You turn on the TV, and Donald J. Trump, with his hand on his own $59.99 God Bless the USA Bible, is being sworn in as 47th President of the United States.
That in and of itself is chilling. He doesn't even need to go into the rest. It's chilling enough to be absolutely sure. So that's the stage, right, that he sets. And then he gives some examples by some specific days. Again, we're going to play some of them.
Day 5. Trump reintroduces his Schedule F executive order and this time fires 50,000 federal government employees, replacing them all with MAGA loyalists. Day 7. Trump's new White House press secretary, the unhinged Islamophobe and conspiracy theorist Laura Loomer, announces that the president is nominating her fellow conspiracy theorist, General Michael Flynn, to be defense secretary. Yes, the General Michael Flynn who called for martial law in 2020.
He did. This is a guy who is a former high-ranking officer of the United States Armed Forces, and he is just full-throated MAGA. I mean, he wants Donald Trump to declare martial law. He wanted him to resist the peaceful transfer of power, and he has been unrepentant. And some might say, well, you need Senate confirmation for a defense secretary so the Senate could stop such an appointment. Well, number one, we have no reason to believe that Republicans would act to stop Donald Trump. They really don't do it now, and he's not even in office. Second, even if we can trust that they would, which we can't, the fact of the matter is that Trump can make acting appointments to cabinet positions and basically bypass the Senate to do it. So that's of absolutely no comfort whatsoever.
Day 15. Trump instructs his brand new Attorney General, Mike Davis, to fire Special Prosecutor Jack Smith and throw out all the federal cases against him. And then instead launch spurious investigations into Joe Biden, Barack Obama, and yes, Hillary Clinton. Day 21. Trump calls for General Mark Milley's prosecution and execution. Day 29. Trump's newly confirmed CIA director, Kash Patel, announces,
"We will go out and find the conspirators, not just in government, but in the media. Yes, we're going to come after the people in the media who lied about American citizens, who helped Joe Biden rig presidential elections. We're going to come after you."
Oh.
So Kash Patel is named on several lists as being a close Trump advisor and someone who may very well end up being his CIA director. That's absolutely terrifying, right? Because again, this is something that we don't have to speculate about. Patel has repeatedly said this, and he said that particular part on Steve Bannon's War Room podcast, Steve Bannon being a top Trump advisor who may very well become Trump's chief of staff, effectively the second most powerful man in federal government. Then with respect to some of the other things that Mehdi Hasan pointed out, like Donald Trump seeking the prosecution of President Biden, President Obama, and Secretary Hillary Clinton, Donald Trump has publicly, openly, consistently run on platforms of jailing his political opponents in every election cycle. 2016 against Hillary Clinton, 2020 as the sitting president, he publicly said on Fox News repeatedly that he wanted his attorney general, Bill Barr, to prosecute Joe Biden, the then Democratic nominee. And he's also said it again in 2024. So none of this is speculation. Donald Trump, we have him dead to rights, is guilty of the very sort of aggressive weaponization of the Department of Justice that the right thinks Joe Biden is guilty of, but have no evidence of.
Day 45. The president orders authorities to build massive detention camps and raid cities nationwide.
Carry out the largest domestic deportation operation in American history.
The president's top advisor on immigration, Stephen Miller, explains how it'll be done.
You go to the red state governors and you say, give us your National Guard. We will deputize them as immigration enforcement officers. And if you're going to go into an unfriendly state like Maryland, well, then it would just be Virginia doing the arrest in Maryland, right? Very close, very nearby.
Again, and it goes on for the first 100 days. You should definitely check out the full thing. It is completely sobering. It's as fact-based as you can possibly be because he constantly brings the receipts. This is how Mehdi Hasan concluded that particular montage.
Now, I know what the critics will say. Mehdi, things can't possibly get that bad. This is alarmist hyperbole. But those critics said the same thing at the start of Trump's first term in 2017, a term that ended in almost 500,000 COVID deaths, many of them preventable, a 6-3 conservative Supreme Court that would go on to gut abortion rights and affirmative action, and of course an armed insurrection at the Capitol. And that was with all the adults in the room and the guardrails and the checks and balances. There'll be none of those next time round, just a wannabe dictator surrounded by authoritarian sycophants on an anti-democratic mission of vengeance, cruelty, and persecution.
So again, this is something that we constantly say on this show. The institutions of the United States of America are not divinely crafted nor divinely enforced. They have to be maintained by men of good faith, men and women of good faith, right? And Donald Trump has made it abundantly clear that his number one criteria for those whom he seeks in a second Trump presidency will be personal loyalty to him, not fidelity to the Constitution. And so when enlightened centrists and right-wingers say you don't have to worry about this because the guardrails will hold, the institutions will hold, well, not if Trump puts into place people who will corrupt the institutions for his political benefit. And no one, not a centrist, not a conservative, has had a cogent, persuasive argument to the contrary because they simply know it's just the case that just appealing to the institutions, that's not a persuasive argument. It's again, I've used this metaphor like when they talk about guardrails. If a Ford F-150 crashes into guardrails on a highway, literal guardrails, when we remove the truck, we don't just toss a fresh set of keys to the person who drove the truck through the guardrails and say, please try it again, right? You remove the truck, you reinforce the guardrails, and you do everything in your power to deter somebody from trying to collide with them again. This would be the equivalent of centrists and conservatives looking at the mangled guardrails, which just barely held the first F-150, and tossing that guy a fresh set of keys and saying, yeah, try again. I mean, it worked the first time. It'll probably hold the second time. Absolutely makes no sense whatsoever. Now, the other two clips I want to play here, Mehdi talks to Anthony Scaramucci, a former top Trump advisor, his communications director for 11 days. And Scaramucci makes a point, which is really good here, and one that I've made before, which makes me wonder if he has in fact watched Pondering Politics.
Here's one last point. 40 people that worked super close with him said, no, I'm sorry, we cannot endorse him. The vice president of the United States, the person he chose to be on the so remember, the vice president, the only one he couldn't fire, Mehdi.
Yeah.
Okay, because he was on the ballot with him. He got elected alongside of him. I said, no, I will not vote for this man to re-enter the White House. So what I can't figure out is how that is not penetrating. If we were all members of a car company and we said, hey, we're all executives of the car company and the car's going to fall apart, don't buy the car, I think people would listen. But with this guy, he is right. There's a group of people that will be with him if he shoots people on Fifth Avenue, quotes Adolf Hitler and his.
Again, all of that's true. We've talked about this. You know, Donald Trump has an unprecedented number of former cabinet officials and top advisors who are not only refusing to endorse him, have actually gone out of their way to say he should not be president. Like, they're not just staying silent. They are publicly declaring their opposition to Donald Trump. It is unprecedented. We've never heard of anything like this on this scale. And I've used the example of, a resume, right? Somebody applying for a job. If you were the hiring manager of a particular company and you had somebody's resume before you, they were applying for a particular job, and you were responsible for filling that job, and you're vetting these people, and you look at this person's resume, you call their references, and their former coworkers, their former bosses, their former employees, people who worked closely with them, who know them the best professionally, are saying, do not hire this person. This person is terrible. You probably wouldn't hire them. So why on earth would we use any other type of logic when it comes to the most important job in this country, the president of the United States? Well, of course we wouldn't if we were behaving rationally. Unfortunately, the Republican Party has become an authoritarian, irrational cult of personality. And they, again, have no cogent or persuasive argument to the contrary. Anyway, I thought this was really good. You should definitely check out the first episode of Mehdi Unfiltered. It's on Zateo.com. And let me know what you think in the comments.